new to me too. Anybody who is interested can also search for Africa Teen Geeks on YouTube. We are currently streaming live. So if you're interested, you can also log on to YouTube and see what's going on as far as this lesson is concerned. Right, so as I said, grade 10 IT, and we are going to start with revision of term 1 work. I think it's important that we go right back to the beginning to make sure that everybody is all on the same page, and then we can move on from there. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to revise term 1's work. We're going to look at the Delphi design environment. We're going to look at some common components. We're going to look at our rules and conventions regarding naming components. And then we're going to change simple properties of components. We're going to look at our data types. And of course, then the all-important saving your Delphi program. Because if you can't get that right, you can't carry on working. Right, so when you open your Delphi, this is the screen that you are presented with. As soon as you create a new program, you've got your design environment. Now, oh my word, sorry guys. Okay, here you have the Delphi design environment, and the important parts behind this are your structure, your object inspector, and of course, your tool palette. Okay, let's have a look at each of these sections in more detail. If you look at the expanded view of your structure, you'll see that it gives you a visual view of everything that happens to be on your particular form at any given time. So the structure allows you, if you need to select a particular component so that if you want to change settings in the object inspector, whichever component you have selected in the object inspector will then display its properties, in the structure, that allows you then to change certain settings for that particular component. Our tool palette is where we will go to find all of our components. Now, fortunately, you don't need to remember where specific components are, because if you just type the first 3 letters of any particular component, it's going to appear or cut out whatever it is that you are looking for so that you can find the component that you are trying to add to your form. Okay. Right, now let's have a look at our Delphi program. So here I've created the Delphi program that I had in the screenshot, and you can see I've got a whole lot of different components on it. So let's have a look a little bit more closely at these common components. First of all, and most important, every program has a form. And the form will then be the container for all of your other components. You can see that from the hierarchical view that we've got over here. So you can see that all of these components fall underneath the form in our structure view. Now let's once again, hopefully, recap exactly what some of these components are. So we're going to start with our labels. Now, a label is generally used for output to display instructions or information to the user, just like I've got here. I'm telling the user what I expect from them. Here, I've got some edits, and the edits are generally used to get input from the user. So when you want the user to capture some information in your program, you're possibly going to use an input. An input accepts text, and we'll later get on to exactly what that means. A spin edit will only accept numerical data. You cannot type text into a spin edit. So if you're looking for something specifically numerical, you are then going to add a spin edit to your program. So for example, here I'm asking the user for their age, and therefore I'm not going to need to add an edit. I'll use a spin edit because it helps me with my program and it helps them. Then the panel. Now, your panel is often used or can be used in the same way as a label because it is used to output. But it can also very often be used to group things together. So it's almost used to draw the user's eye to a grouped section of information to make it easier for them to actually capture. Sorry, I'm reading all of your chats here just to make sure that I'm not missing a question. So, right, so your panel is here to group everything. What I've done here is I've added 2 buttons. Now you can see that these 2 buttons are different buttons purely by what their names are. This over here is your regular button, and that's usually used to trigger some sort of an event. And most often we would use the OnClick event to be able to get something running and make the program do something. This over here is what we call a bitmap button. Now, a bitmap button can be very useful because the bitmap button is something that can have, some of them, depending on which one you choose, is going to be able to execute code that's already built in. You don't need to actually add any code to some of these buttons. The code is already there, okay? And I'm going to show you just now exactly what we're going to do with that. Then down here, we have a component that could possibly be mistaken for one of 2 things, because if you look at them on your form, they look very similar. And the only way that I would be able to tell that this is any different is that I look at my structure or at my object inspector and it tells me that it's a memo. So let's start with my first question. Can anybody tell me what the other component is that looks a lot like this particular component over here? Any takers? Yes, well done, iPad. Okay, the other component is a rich edit. Does anybody know what the difference is between a rich edit and a memo? Anybody got any ideas? Why do we have both of them? No takers. Okay. A memo. No. Okay. Different information, not changed by the user. No. Both of them can be changed by the user. A memo is actually just a multi-line edit. And a memo can only hold text, plain text, whereas a rich edit can hold rich text. So you can change the color or the font or the style, so you can make the text bold or anything like that in a rich edit, which you cannot do in a memo. So hopefully I've at least taught you something new today. Right, let's go back to PowerPoint quickly, because what I want to do is see, once again, I've got some more components here. I want to see if you guys can possibly recognize these components. Okay, so step 1, this one over here that says IT equals best. Anybody want to tell me what it is? Well done, Callum. Yes, it's a checkbox. Okay, what about this one here that allows me to select different options in a drop-down list? No, I'm not seeing the right answer yet. Definitely not a spin edit. Spin edit, we've already had a look at. It takes numbers. This is called a combo box. Okay, there we go, Sebastian, well done. A little bit behind me, unless it's our internet connection. Okay, here's a little bit of an easier one. What component is this? Well done. Yes, I see. There we go. We got lots of you. Well done. This is an image component. And finally, this component over here that allows you to select one of a selection of options. Yes, well done. It is called a radio group. Okay, well done. Excellent. I'm pleased to see that this is all old hat for you guys. Right, let's go back now to our Delphi program where we can change some properties of this program in the object inspector. So the first thing that I want to demonstrate to you is, I said to you that the form is the container of everything else. Sometimes what we do is we also call it the parent of all of the other components. And what that means is that I can actually get some of my components to inherit properties from the parent. So what I want to show you, I just want to quickly close this error message thing on the bottom here. What I want to show you is if I select my form, I go to the object inspector and I find the font property. Now, the first thing that I want to show you guys is if you click next to the font property, you'll see that there's 3 dots that appear next to it. And usually it's perfectly fine to select the 3 dots. If you select the 3 dots, you will see that this window pops up that allows you to make changes to the font style, the size, all kinds of fun stuff, which is very useful. But for now, at least until we finished revising the grade 10 work, I recommend that you don't use this route. And the only reason I say that is because I think it's more important to pay attention to the steps that you take when you change the properties of a particular component. So if you have a look in your object inspector, and hopefully you can see this side of my screen, there's a plus sign next to the word font. If I click the plus sign next to the word font, you will see that it drops down a whole lot of different options, exactly the same as what you saw in the window. But now you know that the step that you had to follow to change the font was select the form, then select the font, and now I'm going to go into the size property and I'm going to type 14. When I press enter, it changes the font size of everything on my form. So everything on the form has now inherited the change in the font because the font is a parent. Okay. Now, next one I'm going to change here is my bitmap button. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the kind property and I'm going to change it to a close button. As soon as I select close, you'll see that the caption changes and you will see that there is now an image on this button. Okay, something else I want to show you that I think is pretty cool. I'm going to add another bitmap button to my form. So I go to my tool palette and I start typing the first 3 letters of the component that I'm looking for. As soon as I type bit, you see that T bit button appears. I select it in my tool palette and I click to add it to my form. I'm going to make my form a little bit bigger. Now this time, I'm not going to change the kind property. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that it's selected and I'm going to go to the glyph property of my button. You will see that right now it says none. I'm going to click on the 3 dots next to the glyph property. I can do that here. And I'm going to click on OK. Okay, and it did nothing. Because I should have clicked on load. Shows you what happens when you're not concentrating. Okay, if I then go into the folder that my program saved, and the only reason it's there is because I actually put it there, and now of course I can't find it. There it is. I can find a bitmap that I can now add to my button. So I've already put it in the folder. I select the picture, I click open, and I click OK. And there it is. I have now added my own image to my new button. Okay, I see somebody's very kindly answered the question about what the kind does. Well done. Right, so now I've added a new pretty picture. I can now change the caption properties on all of these components. So I'm going to start with my new button, and I'm going to change the caption to clear. Okay. My close button already has its caption. I'm going to go to this button, and I'm going to change the caption to display. What I'm also going to do with the display button is I'm going to put an ampersand or an and symbol in front of the word. And when I'm finished doing all kinds of other editing, I will show you what that does. I'm going to select my panel now, and I'm going to clear the caption of the panel because I'm actually just using it as something to group everything together. And then I'm going to change a few more properties of my panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the height property of my panel, and in the object inspector, I'm going to change that to 81. And there it changes the height of it. I will then find the left property, and I'm going to change that to 24. Okay, the left property tells you how many pixels from the left of the form my panel is going to be added. Okay, and finally, I'm then going to find the top property of my panel, and I'm going to change that to 144. I can, of course, also, if I really want to, manually change the size of my components. I don't have to go into the object inspector to change things. I can move them around as well. Why, Ethan, do you say there were two heights? Okay, all right, I'm going to carry on and just change a few other things. So here I've got two edits. Okay, they've got the words edit 1 and edit 2 in them. Obviously, that's not very useful as far as my program is concerned. Can anybody tell me which property I'm going to need to change to remove the words edit 1 and edit 2? Right, well done, Tyler. The word is the text property. What I'm going to do is, because I want to change it on two components, I'm going to select both of them. So I'm going to select edit 1, and then I'm going to select or hold down shift while I select edit 2. Okay, you can now see that both of them have been selected. So now I can find the text property in the object inspector, because now I've got only the properties that are common to these two. Click in the text property and backspace to remove what's going on. Okay, or remove the text. So now my program is already looking much better. I'm very bothered by this edit, but that spin edit, but that's already looking an awful lot better. Okay, right, now what I want to show you is another bit of an interesting one, is if you want to have a look at your computers, this is where you will find glyphs and icons and things like that. So as soon as you install Delphi, if you go to the program files, common files, code, gear, shared, and images, you will find these folders that will provide you with additional glyphs. Okay, now I'm getting error messages from Zoom anyway. So the glyph, yes, the glyph is like a picture, but it's like a customized picture. So as a matter of fact, if you click on the close, you can change the default close glyph to something else if you really wanted to. So yes, that's exactly what it is. The glyph is the little picture that you would put on a bitmap button. It's usually a bitmap because it's a bitmap button. Okay, but you can't just add any old bitmap to the button, because if you go and find a regular one on the internet, it might just end up being too big. Sorry, I need to close this. It might end up being too big to actually appear on your button. So it's better that you actually use the ones that have been provided by Delphi, and you'll see there are actually lots and lots of them. Okay. Right, so now we know our components. Now let's have a look at what happens when we name them. Okay, remember this should all be old hat, but let's make sure. So there are rules that govern how and what we name our components. Your component names or your object names, objects is another word that we use to refer to these components, and that becomes important once you get into grade 11 and 12. But for now, you can use object and component interchangeably. So object name cannot be a reserved word. So we've just had a look at different properties of our components. So text is a property. Therefore, I can't use that as the name for my component. The names must be unique. Just like your parents would not give two of you the same name because it would cause all kinds of confusion if you and your sibling had the same name. So this applies to Delphi as well. You cannot have two components having the same name because it's going to cause all kinds of confusion. So your names have to be unique. You cannot have spaces in your names. They cannot start with a number. Okay, you can't have the name of a component start with a number, but you can have a number somewhere in the name, or yes, I see somebody said there, you can use an underscore in place of a space. Okay, but my advice is don't come up with component names that go on forever. So you're not going to call your label or your button, please click here with underscores between them, because then you are the ones that have to type that when you're using your code. And then the last rule is that you cannot have any special characters like the dollar sign or the hash or the @ or the star or anything like that. Okay. Right, now let's have a look at conventions. So the conventions are not dictated by Delphi. They are not steadfast rules, but they are what we use to make our own lives better or easier. And they're also there so that everybody is doing the same thing. So always name the form. Okay, it's very important that you always name your form. You rename the objects that you're going to be referring to in your code. So a label, like you saw in my program, and we'll have a look at it again just now, a label that's just going to ask the user to enter their name doesn't need to have a name like LBL whatever, because you're not going to be referring to it in your code. There are prefixes that we use to indicate what the object actually is. And by using this prefix, it helps us to be sure that we don't rename or don't break all of those rules that we have. And of course, then you've got a username that describes the purpose. So let's have a look at whether you can give me some prefixes. So first one, form. What's the prefix? Yes, I see it. Thank you. Edit. Good. Some of you are very quick on the draw here. Panel. Good. Label. I already gave you that answer. Well done, guys. Rich edit. Good. I'm pleased to see that this is mostly revision. Checkbox. Cool. A checkbox can be CBX or CHK. So either one is right. I'm seeing lots of correct answers here. Okay, so combo box you didn't recognize. Anybody want to tell me what the combo box would be? You didn't know what it was. Anybody want to guess what the prefix would be? All right, good. CMB. Well done. Radio group. Good. Yes, CBX can sometimes be used for the combo box as well. Radio group is RGP. Ah, somebody's already way ahead of me here. Good, yes. Image is IMG. And shape, we didn't even discuss the shape, but I see you're all very wide awake there. So there is our SHP for shape. Right, let's go back to our program and do some naming. Okay, so like I said, this one doesn't need a name. I'm not going to be referring to it in my code. So this one here, what am I going to call this one? Anybody want to tell me? No, not EDT1. That isn't descriptive at all. Yes, there we go. Now we've got some more descriptive names people are coming up with. EDT name. Okay, the EDT to indicate what it is, and name because it's going to be receiving the user's name. Right, surname is going to be EDT surname. Okay, this one here, we didn't discuss it just now. Well done, guys. Yes, SEDH. This button, any ideas? Oh, you've all gone quiet. BTN display, good. Okay, what about this one? Okay, somebody said BTN close. Ah, there we go. Now we've got some answers there. Because it's a different type of button, it's going to be BMB close. We have to indicate what its type is. Do I need to name my panel? Am I going to be referring to it in my code? No, well done. Good job, guys. Mem output is already named, so I don't need to do this one. And finally, well, not finally, because I've left one out, but you can all tell me what I've left out now. This one's going to be BMB clear. Good. Right. What have I left out? All important one. Yes, the form. Thank you, Ryan. Right, so select my form over here. I'm going to find the name and I'm going to call it FRM. Who knows what I'm actually planning to do here, but let's call it FRM register. Okay. Right, so now I have a much improved Delphi program. Okay, it looks better. It's got the names that I can need, and now I can start coding. But before I start coding, I am going to oh, there it is. I'm going to now start having a look at my different data types. So hopefully you all learned in your theory lessons that programming languages are typed. That means that it's very important to be able to distinguish between the different types of data that you are using in your program. So let's have a look at the different data types, the common ones that we tend to use in Delphi. So our first one is the real data type. The real data type is numbers that will have decimal values. So things like money, percentages, things like that are always going to be used as real values. I'm sure, hopefully, that you can see here are some examples of real values, and hopefully somebody can have a look at this number and tell me if they recognize it. Oh, some of you are so bored you make pictures. Well done there. Good, perhaps. Right, integer is another number, but your integer value is not going to have any decimals. Well done, guys. I'm glad you can recognize pi. Now, pi is not going to be an integer value because it has to have all these decimal places. So things like your grade, your age, the number of people in a class, that kind of thing, are all going to be used as integer values because you can't be in grade 10.5. Some of you, I'm sure you would. Yes, there we go, the 12th digit of something. Excellent. String is going to be any characters that are combined together. Now, this is very, very important to remember. Any Letters like a name or a car registration number or a string of characters or even a telephone number would be considered a string. Now, this is something that you have to remember. It's so very, very important. I'm sure some of you are looking at this and going, but hang on a second. A phone number is a number. Why on earth would I put a phone number as a string? So, what do I need to think about? I need to think about the fact that if I am not planning to perform a calculation with a number, then I'm going to store it as a string, because nobody is going to add two phone numbers together to work out what they are. Whereas if you have a look at somebody's age, you might want to use their age to work out what year they were born in. So you're going to perform a calculation. Moving on. Boolean is only either true or false. And again, it's actually true or false. It's not true with inverted commas around it like our text is. It is actually true or false. And a character is then going to be one single character, whether it's a letter or a symbol or even a digit. And what you also have to remember is a space. So a space is also considered a character by Delphi. So we, in our regular days, don't necessarily think about them, but a space is also considered a character. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. Right. So let's have a look at some of our different components and see if we can work out what the data type of these different properties are. So what is the data type of an edit text property? Good. It's a string. Okay. What is the data type of a spin edits value property? Good. Yes, it's an integer. What is the data type of a button's visible property? Good, guys. I'm glad to see that it looks like there's a lot of revision happening here, that this is all old hat to you. Okay, here's one. What's the data type of the form's font name property? Okay, good. I see Aiden, Ruben, well done. It is string. Okay. So when you are typing your code, you're going to find yourself placing inverted commas around the font name property. Okay. Right. I told you that it was going to be important to learn exactly how to save your Delphi program. Now, before you can save a program, you're going to have to create a program. Okay. So if I go back to my Delphi here, I'm going to close this one because I want to start a new one so that I can show you exactly what's going on. So first of all, I'm going to go File, Close All. Okay, this is another thing that is I don't want to save this. This is another thing that's very, very important, because if you have one Delphi program open and then you open another one, Delphi will try and merge the two together. So let's start with a brand new program. I know I'm starting at the end, but you should all know that by now. File, New. Which one do I select? Good, VCL Forms Application. I click on that one and it gives me my blank form. Now, when it comes to saving this, I'm going to click on File, What? Good. Save all. It opens up a window for me. What's my next step? Vitally important. Oh, you've gone very quiet, guys. Now, okay, the first step is create a new folder. Yes, Reardon, well done. You have to create a new folder for every program that you make because you want them all linked together so that you can access them more easily. So I'm just going to call the folder my program. And then I'm going to go into my program. Just want to do something quickly. Okay, and now I'm going to name my Delphi unit. You can see it tells me here that I'm about to name the Delphi unit. What am I going to call it? Okay, now this again is probably going to be different depending on your teachers and their preferences. But what I teach is we start with, and this once again becomes important later on in IT, is we call it FRM. Right, there we go. Thanks, Ruben. And then we're going to call it, let's say, I see somebody suggested it, so let's use it, my program. And then, good, underscore U. The reason why I add the underscore U is so that I can identify that this is the Delphi unit. When I've done that, I click Save. If you have done this correctly, the next window will pop up. If you just clicked on File Save, then this next window is not going to pop up. So you have to be sure that you click on File Save All. And this one we will now call, there we go. Well done, guys. FRM, my program, underscore P. Now the P is there to say I am now saving my Delphi project. And then I can click the Save button. So now my program is saved. But let's have a look quickly at exactly what is going on here. Before we go here, I want to quickly just navigate to that folder. Okay, and here you can see, here are all of the files that have been created with me saving my program. Obviously, it's not going to do anything at this stage. But if I run my program, yay, very exciting, a form pops up. Okay, but if I go back to my folder, what has been added to the folder? Oh, thank you. Somebody's been drawing pictures, but yes, the executable has been added. And what this means is I can now take this executable, I can put it onto any computer that I choose to, and my program will run on that computer. It doesn't have to have Delphi installed on it. Okay. Another very, very important thing that you need to bear in mind, and please, particularly in your tests and your exams, you must never, ever change any of these things in Windows Explorer. If you decide that you want to rename your PAS file while you're in Windows Explorer, it throws everything up, and then you can't even open your program. Okay. Oh, Aiden, yes. This is new to me. Let's see what happens when you raise your hand. I don't know. Okay. Aiden, I see your hands raised. Please ask the question and then we'll see if I can answer you. How do you get the EXE onto another program? You would just, onto another computer, sorry, you would just copy it. So you would choose right click copy, and then you put it on a memory stick or whatever you like, and you can then change it. Okay. Aiden, I think you are looking at wanting to change. You're asking about changing the icon. To be honest with you, I don't know. I'd have to look that up, but I'll make sure that I include it in the lesson for next time. So you just do that, yes, and the program will run. Yes. Okay. Right, I did say that I was going to show you, and I completely forgot about it, what I did as far as the buttons are concerned. This is the wrong one. Okay, so let's just see if I can find my program, because I want to show you what happened with that D next to the sorry, my Delphi doesn't work very well. It likes to be told what to do. And now it's going to open another version of Delphi as well. Okay, let's try it this way. File, open project. That's a good one to revise. So if I want to open a Delphi program, I need to go file, open project to be able to get it. And that worked really well. See, this is what happens when you mess around, or when I do. Okay, right, there's my open project. If you have a look here, once again, let's just double check it. You can see that I've put the and sign in front of the display. Now, again, obviously this program doesn't do anything, but if I run it, I do want to just show you. You'll see that there is a line underneath the D for display. So what that means is I can press Alt and D, and it will then execute the OnClick event of this button. Like I said, your bitmap buttons have built-in code. So if you click on this button here, because it's been selected as a bitmap button, if I click this button, it's going to execute the code without me having done anything. So if I click close, it closes the program, and I didn't have to add any code at all. Right, so let's finish off here now. We've now gone through the steps involved in saving our program. It's vitally important that you choose Save All. You must make a folder for your program. Please show how to change the kind button one more time. Okay, with pleasure. Okay, if I go to this button, or let's add another one. Okay. Okay, it has to be a bitmap button. Okay, I add it here. And then if I find the kind property there, and I click the drop down arrow next to kind, you will see that I get a whole lot of different options here. So if I clicked on BK help, it changes the glyph and it changes the text. Okay, at this stage, it doesn't do anything because there's no built-in help code. Okay, somebody wants me to explain the parent thing. Okay, so all that the parent thing means is that your form is the holder of all of these things. So there are certain properties that if you change the properties on the parent, in other words, the form, it's going to change everything else. It even will work if I select my panel and I change something on my panel, it's going to change on the buttons, because here the panel is the parent of these two buttons. So if I went to font, oh, we're running out of time. Okay, now I can't, there we go. If I went to font and I changed this to something ridiculous like 20, okay, it changes the font size of the buttons on the panel as well, because the panel is the parent of these two buttons. Okay, why do I put and before display? I did that because that means when I run my program, I can now press Alt and D, and it will do the same thing as clicking the button. If I wanted to, I could put the and in front of the Y. And you don't see it here, but if I run it, it's going to take a while. The Y is now underlined. So now I can do Alt Y and it will run the program. Okay, so Lely, I see your hand has been up for a while. Ask your question, please. What codes? Minnie, I don't know what you mean by the codes. Okay. While you guys are, I don't know what you're asking, but when you ask, then let me know. Right, so what have we learned today? Okay, we've learned there are common components that are also called objects. You need to know what they are. Okay, the next lesson will be same time tomorrow, Sandra. Know your way around the object inspector. Make sure you know and understand the 5 basic data types. All your properties in your object inspector have their own data types. And you need to remember that you have to save both the unit and the project files in the same folder when you are going to save your program. Okay. Then the textbook that I'm using for this series of lessons is called the Dandelion Delphi Book 1 for Grade 10 Information Technology. And you can go to this URL to find the data for this textbook. I am going to be working through a lot of the activities that you can find in this textbook. So I would recommend that you actually go to this website and download the data so that you can follow along with me as I do it. Okay. Next time, we're going to look at changing the properties of our objects using code. We're going to look at identifying the syntax errors, because I know a lot of you get stuck on, oh dear, there's a red line. We're going to look at variables and using their data types, and we are going to look at converting between those data types in order to use the program. Okay, guys, I see you've raised your hands, and unfortunately, I don't know how to access the fact that you've raised your hands. So let me know. Okay, show the link for Delphi again. In other words, you want to see where to get the data. There it is there. Okay, so that's the website that you need to go to find the data that I'm going to be using to work through activities for the rest of this time. Okay. Right, look us up. Use the following hashtags to look up if you want any more information. And for those of you who are interested, I will see you again tomorrow, same time. Thank you. Bye.